My sister-in-law picked up a brand new Tundra, and she's super excited about it. She loves going camping in the summer. She loves going up to the snow in the winter. So what better than having a good, reliable TRD Tundra to allow her to do those things. She wants to keep the tonneau cover so that she can keep all of her gear protected during the winter, but she wants to have a rooftop tent and a bed rack system to go camping in the summer. There aren't many systems out there on the market that let you do both, but TRUKD does. So today we're going to be installing a bed rack system that goes over the top of her tonneau cover, still allowing her to open the tonneau cover, but also allowing us to put a big old rooftop tent up top so that she can go camping in the summer. I'm going to start off today by just unpacking everything, getting an understanding of what parts are there and a good layout on this mat down here that's just going to organize my workflow. Then I know what parts are going to be there, so then I can start putting everything into place onto the truck. Here we have everything that was included in the packaging in no particular order, minus how I took it all apart and put it on here. But it looks like all the hardware is included, which is really nice. We have the big main cross beams over there. We have the connector beams here. I believe these guys connect the cross beams, or the connector beams to the cross beams over there. These guys here are the mounts that sit on the bed rail. And then these they call, I believe, the faceplates that go on the flip side of these down here that all get connected. Oh, no, I'm wrong. These faceplates go on these main bars. So there's a bit of assembly to go through. We're going to go step by step, and I'm going to show you guys how to put this fully together. This is it for required tools. They just suggest you have a tape measure, a 5/32 hex head, a 7/32 hex head, and a 1/2 inch and a 9/16 socket. They do advise you to use standard and not metric sockets because you don't want anything to strip or ruin the bolts. And there's our design for standards. When I'm doing the install, I'm also going to need a drill and a drill bit and some other accessories to mount the tonneau cover over the top of the bed rack. But these are the suggested tools from TRUKD. TRUKD does a good job of labeling the bags. This one's 4B, and that's the one you're going to start with. It looks like they handwrite them with a Sharpie on there. I just dumped all the hardware out right next to me so I can grab it really easily. We are going to be installing a lot of this hardware onto some of these pieces. We've got the riser piece here. It gets 6 bolts, washers, and locking nuts all on this top side here. All of the bolts are facing outwards. So there's 2 on each side and 2 going down. Looks something like that. And you're going to do the crossbar or the connecting bar. And all the bolts go from the inside out on that one with the washer and nut on the outside there. So pay very close attention to the details and how to set this up and make sure that you're putting the correct fasteners in the correct orientation. That's going to save your butt in the future. Now that I've done these 2, I have 3 more of each to go. A lot of hardware to install here, so let's just get going. I'm only loosening, very loosely tightening all this stuff on there. I'm not cranking anything down yet. I'm not sure how it's going to slide in, how it's going to work yet, but I just want to make sure that they're all in place. So I just snug the nut down till the locking washer on the inside of that nut bottoms out. That should be enough to hold it in place for now. But just, one at a time, a bunch to do. Step 2 is to place the connector brackets onto the crossbars. You have 2 ways to do this. Really, you could set it so that the C channel is going to be facing out or the flat side is going to be facing out. If you plan to upgrade or use their MSP in the future, you're going to need it so the C channel is facing outwards. I don't foresee my sister-in-law ever doing that, and I think it looks better with the flat facing out, so that's the way I'm going to install it. You can come back later and redo it. It's just going to be a little bit of work. The trick here is to make sure that these little carriage bolts that have the square part on the back side of that dome is going to be all facing square to each other, and so that you can put it into place and slide it on. It does take a little bit of finesse and a little bit of time to just make sure everything's lining up. And then one of the tricks I found is that if you turn these clockwise so that like you were to tighten the nut, it'll rotate it for you and it'll line everything up best fit. So there, I got the top two already in place. There's those bottom two. It just slides right on like that. I'm going to set this bar up to be the one closest to the cab, so this is going to be facing this direction. This one's going to be the one by the tailgate. It's going to be facing towards me, and then we're going to put the connector bar on there at a later point. But that is step 2, so just make sure that you're lining all these things up appropriately and placing them whatever orientation you want to put them in. Step 3 is to attach the faceplate, which we're going to be installing, or accessory panels to the upright bracket. In the instructions, it says to use bag 2B. I don't have a 2B, I have a 2A, and it looks like it's the correct hardware. And it's just washers and flat hex head bolts. You're going to put this on top. You're going to line it up so that everything lines up with the 4 holes that you're going to run this through. Maybe the 2B is for the accessory panels. But this one's just easy. It's just a faceplate. You're just attaching it onto it. So I'll just hand tighten these guys on there, and then I'll come back with the appropriate hex driver. It looks like it'll be the 5/32 in this case, just by eyeballing it. But yep, so we'll just tighten those in, and then you have 4 of those to do. For step 4, we start getting a little complicated. Not very much though. We have the rising bracket and an upright, and a few different hardwares. We have a larger bolt, we have 2 plastic inserts, a washer, and a locking nut. The easy one to do is the bolt with one of the washers that fits over it, the plastic washer. You place that into the desired hole for the height you want. We're going to go as high as possible, and actually you're going to need 2 of those. So we're going to go top and bottom on this upright here. Bam. Now, the smaller ID ones actually go on the riser, and they go on these little plugs on the inside here. It's quite a little tight fit. You can kind of push them on. That's pretty well. And after you tighten everything up, it will suck it all down. So let me just flip this over, because this guy, now you slide it over the top, and you're going to match it up with the holes on the inside here and the hardware that you just installed. There we go. Push it down further, and then you just put it together with the washer and lock nut. So the next step here is we're now assembling the crossbars onto the uprights that we have built. I'm going to slide these connector beams in towards the center so that they're going to kind of be out of the way. Just like before with the carriage bolts, you might need to spin them so that everything aligns correctly. But eventually we're going to end up with these uprights and the crossbars sort of just standing here, maybe probably laying down. But the next step is just sliding this all together, just like we've done in the past. So we'll just slide this guy down and line this guy up. Got to line up all 6 of these bolts. Be it right there. All right, in it goes. And then they suggest tightening up one of these so that it doesn't spin, and it's the 1/2 inch. I'll just loosely put this into place. There we go. So now it's not going to slide around. Now we just do the other side, same thing. And there we go. One set done. Now I got to do that other one. It's roughly 63 inches between the bed rails, so I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to make it like 62. Just to make, we're almost at 62. That works. Let's see. Boom. Yeah, that's 62.5 right there. I think I'm just going to tighten this up. Even though it's not centered or anything, I can center it later once it's up in the air and a little bit more squared out. So I'll just tighten that one down. Tighten this one down just loosely so they don't wiggle around and move. I don't want this one coming out. And then I think we're on to, now we have the connector bars to go. Step number 6 is to place these connector bars back in. Just like always with these carriage bolts, you're just going to slide them in one way and then you're going to slide it in the other way, making sure everything's centered. I probably need to open these guys up a little bit, but I can just move this one for now. That is more or less it. We're going to tighten down. I'm going to tighten down one bolt kind of on all these locations, pretty much on the top, just to make it easy, just to hold everything kind of in place. We're very loosely fit. Nothing's really snug down. But for us, the next major step is probably removing the tonneau cover and getting that ready so that we can lift this up and put it into place and start figuring out how to lay this out appropriately to best fit the truck. We're at the point now where we're going to want to put the rack that we've made and assembled and put it onto the truck bed. But because we're wanting to use the tonneau cover, we have to do it a little differently than the traditional way. So what we need to start doing is we need to remove the rail system on the inside of the bed, and then we need to remove the rails for the cover of the tonneau cover, and then probably remove the entire tonneau cover off as well so that we can then put the rack onto the truck and then reinstall everything to figure out how it's going to bolt together. I do think there's going to be some drilling involved through the rails, the factory rails, to mount it to the rack, but we'll see how all that works here in just a second. But there's going to be a few stages of on and off here just to make sure everything's correct. With the factory bed rails removed, now we're going to remove the mounting hardware that is for the tonneau cover.
These bolts are a T30 Torx bit, and when I used a long extension on my impact driver, it made removing these bolts really easy.
Now that we have all the hardware removed, we have to remove the cover itself, and to do that, we can't simply just lift up on it because of these brackets in here. So we have to tilt this thing back, pull the cap off, and slide every single one out of here. Got my Vanna White assist in it here.
Removing the tonneau cover was no easy task. It's a little bit awkward and a little light on one end and extremely heavy on the other. Having a friend definitely helps. Once we moved it down to the tailgate and we could grab it on each side, it made removing the tonneau cover much easier.
Okay. Tonneau cover off, truck bed on.
Placing the bed rack onto the bed is quite easy. Just make sure that you measured correctly so that it sits between the bed rails.
Now we're at the point where we're going to loosen everything, push it all out, align it, make it squared, and then we have to put back in the rail hardware and make sure nothing hits. All right, so here's how you do the assembly to have a tonneau cover. We kind of have it set up here. We have the rail off at the moment, but we have the tonneau cover rail in position and all the mounts on. And what I highly suggest is you preset the mounts on the tonneau cover here and just sort of hold it up and get it into place instead of trying to slide it in, because it just becomes very difficult. It does not look like it would work, but it actually does. Once you put it in place, it sucks it all down and everything starts to align and look beautiful and work well. One thing I might suggest is getting some sort of weatherproofing for along this rail. I might put a bead of like black caulking on there to seal it up, and same with the far corners as well. That might need some caulking in those corners if you really want to make it waterproof. Okay, so first steps for us now is we have the tonneau cover rail with the mounts in place, so we're gonna hold those up and we're gonna screw them into the bed area where they belong.
The reason you want to preset those mounts is because once you tighten one of them, it is near impossible to slide any additional mounts past the part that hangs down from the trucked uprights. So presetting them, holding it in place, made everything a lot easier.
So we put the rail on, we put the bed rack on, we've installed the top cover. But what I want to show is you really want to try to line this upright bracket here in this crevasse. So because you're going to have to add the bolt and try to get a open end wrench in there, and that's going to be near impossible. So we're going to actually loosen this up. We're going to take it off so that I can show you guys how we did it. And we're going to move this upright back just to be in that opening. So when you're installing this, consider making sure that you're setting those up in the right places, much like we did back here and on the other side. Now that we have the brackets in place, I drew with some Sharpies in there so you can barely see, but that's where we're going to drill through this rail so we can have holes to mount this bracket to the rail. I did the same on the back side, and then we're just going to take those measurements and replicate it for the opposite end.
Once I made those marks, I used a center punch and created a little dimple so that I could use my drill press and drill out some holes that would let me center the bolts inside the rail. Then I grabbed my drill with a step bit and drilled out all those holes to the appropriate size. I'm sorry I don't recall what I drilled those out to, but just make sure that the bolt can fit through there and it doesn't have too much wiggle room, and you will be fine. After drilling out all these holes on both rails, we can start assembly.
So we just put on the tonneau cover rail. It's really loose on there. Nothing's tight down yet. The next step here is for us to hand tighten the rail into place, the factory rail. And this is the fun part where you just have to get in there, slide this up into place, and then hold that and have tiny fingers to make things work. So everything's super tight.
With this step, you're going to be screwing the trucked uprights to the bed rail. You're going to be using the provided hardware that TRUKD gave you that has these nut certs that slide down into the rail and makes a perfect fit. Hopefully, you marked and drilled your holes in the correct locations so that everything lines up appropriately.
All right, the next step for us is to attach the rail to the brackets that are on there for the tonneau cover. So we just got to zip those into place. I'm not doing these tight yet either because we're going to have to get behind here to tighten these guys, which is fun. Now we're going to tighten the bolts that are all the way through. Looks like you should go counterclockwise because they're backwards.
My gear wrench, flex head ratcheting wrench made this step very easy. It was able to bend and grab the backside of that bolt, even though you couldn't see it. This is also the first step when I actually started cranking things down and making it tight. Make sure you get in there and tighten it up because you don't want to try to get in there again.
Almost done now. Now I'm just gonna suck it all in as pretty much as tight as I can. I'm gonna go slowly and probably do like 2 passes. All right. Okay, let's put the tonneau cover back on. Alright, so these long bolts go down through the tonneau cover. You add a spacer between the tonneau cover with a little lip pointing up into the hole and above the metal plate. The bolts go through that. Then the washer, lock washer, and everything is underneath. Alright, let's do the whole, go back a little bit. Up, up, up. we go. All right, let's see how we doing this. Oh, a screw there that it hits. You got this? Yeah. Okay.
Now that the bed rack is on, the tonneau cover is in position, it really comes down to aligning everything and making sure that the tonneau cover is squared. This was probably the most time-consuming part of this entire process, and it was a lot of small changes here and there to try to get things to be perfectly square so that the tonneau cover would rotate and fall into place appropriately. We also loosened everything to try and get this to sit square and snug itself back up. Once we did that and we were able to set the tonneau cover down into place, that's when we tightened everything up and we knew that it was going to be correct and everything was working out well. Something that we found was that the connecting bars that goes from the front crossbar to the rear crossbar was interfering with the tonneau cover. And this was a known fact for this style of tonneau cover. But what we did was we moved those connecting bars to the outside of the crossbars, and that gave us all the room that we needed so that the tonneau cover could pretty much fold all the way up. But I do want to stress that you should take your time here and do it right so that your tonneau cover seats in the appropriate spot and that it's not bulging up in any position. So take your time, look at it, adjust as needed, tighten and loosen different corners to try to get it to sit right, and you will be satisfied at the end.
One last thing to do is these end caps, and it's quite easy. You just hold the plastic piece over and you get their perforated little nail thing there, and you just hammer hand it in. Then all that sharp metal is all covered, so you're never going to cut yourself. And there we have it. We got a tonneau cover and a bed rack system all on the Tundra. Super excited for this. Thank you for TRUK for working with me. I was struggling and they were right there and gave me excellent customer service. I had some questions about if it was going to work and they said, nah, it's going to work. I believe in you, and I'm thankful they did, and we got it going. It's super tight, which is nice. I'm not worried about too much water ingress. Yeah, excited to have this out and working. It did take a little while, and you do need two people. It was a big help to have an extra set of hands working things around, moving things on and off a few times. So if you have a buddy, highly recommend it. This is not really a one-person job at all. But thanks again for watching. Hammer down on that subscribe button. And like always, my friends, keep crawling.